how do you handle situations when someone else questions your effectiveness and knowledge, especially if it happens in an actual proceeding or deposition? Laura, I'd like to start with you.
The first thing I do is I listen to the objection or to the question and consider whether it's reasonable, because nobody knows everything. And there are times that something comes to my attention that I wasn't aware of. And so I talk it through with opposing counsel. But if I don't think it's reasonable, and many times it's not, I just stand my ground. For example, you'll be in the middle of a deposition and someone will threaten you with, well, I'm going to call the board. And it's like, well, go ahead. You want to call the board, you call the board. If your request is unreasonable or silly, the board's going to recognize that. If not, I can put my views on the record as well and then preserve the record for appeal. I'm also not leery of suggesting a call with the board if I think it's necessary, if I've objected to something outside the scope and it's continuously outside the scope. Even if I don't think that the judge will necessarily stop the deposition, I make the call and I get my views of record, because not only are you building the record before the PTAB, but you're building the record for appeal. And I find that, given the purpose of these proceedings as they were adopted, most, if not all, of the judges are open to a call. I think they would rather have you make that call while you're at the deposition instead of getting the question later when you're talking about it in a phone call a couple of weeks later. Well, why didn't you call us during the deposition when we could have done something about it? So I don't take calling the board as a threat. So I think you just really have to consider whether or not it's a reasonable issue. And if it's not, just stand your ground.
Thank you, Laura. And Beth?
Thank you. And I think I'll just piggyback on that. Some of the thoughts that I have to share also have to do with being in a deposition. And I think one thing that perhaps is different in IPR or PTAB proceedings, but in particular IPR proceedings versus a district court proceeding, is that, in a district court proceeding, maybe no one will ever see the deposition, right? Or maybe there'll just be little excerpts that kind of come out at trial and get played, that are very strategically excerpted out of the overall proceeding. But in an IPR, for example, the entire transcript is filed, and that's something that the board can read. And so really it's much more like a trial cross-examination. But nonetheless, there are practitioners, and in my experience, sometimes practitioners who are less familiar with PTAB matters, who will maybe treat it more like a district court deposition. And I had one particular instance in which I was defending an expert witness, and opposing counsel was really highly aggressive, inappropriately so, trying to goad the witness. As we talked about, one of the objections that's okay to make is objection to form. He accused me of coaching the witness by somehow objecting to form. Didn't understand that one. And he, I think at one point also accused me of being emotional when I was just speaking calmly. And he was actually the one that I think was, if anybody was being inappropriately emotional, it would have been him. And I think really, consistent with what Laura said, just stay calm. The record here reflects that none of what he says is actually happening. I just shut it down, told him to ask his questions and stop the commentary and just keep moving forward. And I think you have to trust yourself. I think some people, their strategy is to try to rattle you or to try to rattle a witness. And I think you just have to show that you won't be rattled. And I think in general, when that's someone's strategy, that's all they have to go to. It often means that the actual facts are not on their side. And so I try to remind myself of that sometimes. So like, he's going there, he must not have anything else or something like that. And so I think you just have to trust yourself, listen to what someone says, but stand your ground and stay calm and just show that you won't be rattled.